Deciding on the best Canon camera for you can be tricky, with a huge range of options, ranging from DSLRs to compacts. Canon has models in most camera subgenres. Luckily, we've rounded up the finest options from its extensive catalog, including both new models and great value legacy ones. The Canon PowerShot G5X Mark II isn't the conventional Mark II update that we normally see with this kind of compact camera. Sure, it arrives with a handful of improvements to the spec sheet that we may have expected, but its completely different design signals different intentions, and with it, potentially a different kind of use too. Things have moved on inside the camera too. Canon has made a handful of changes to the imaging pipeline, fitting the model with a new 20.1 MP stacked 1-inch CMOS sensor, and with the company's latest Digigate processing engine driving things. This also allows for 4K video recording, and Canon notes that this happens without any crop factor, a common complaint on cameras of all classes that record 4K video. This, in turn, means the wide-angle view of the lens can be maintained during video recording. The lens itself is a new optic, one that offers a focal range equivalent to 24 to 120 mm in 35 mm terms, and a respectably wide maximum aperture of f/1.8 to 2.8, together with lens-based image stabilization that claims a 4-stop compensatory effect. The body has been fitted with a 2.36 million EVF and a 3-inch LCD screen that can be tilted downwards and upwards, and all the way around to face the front when necessary. An eye sensor positioned just above the LCD also means that the camera can automatically switch the feed between the two as it detects you looking from one to the other. Other new features include a 30 fps RAW burst mode, which sits alongside a 20 fps regular burst mode, while a 31-point contrast detect AF system, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and USB charging have also all been thrown into the mix. The EOS 6D Mark II's brand new 26.2 megapixel sensor is a significant improvement in resolution on the old model's 20.2 megapixels, and more in line with rival cameras from Nikon and Sony. More importantly, perhaps, this new sensor uses Canon's dual-pixel CMOS AF sensor to deliver fast phase detection autofocus even in live view mode, so live view and movie autofocus should be faster and smoother than the EOS 6D Mark I's older and simpler contrast autofocus system. The 6D Mark II's regular autofocus system gets an update too, with a 45-point array that's light years ahead of the old model's archaic 9-point system, and Canon's latest Digic 7 image processor aids object recognition and focus tracking to predict subject movement across the frame. The new sensor and Digic 7 combination delivers an ISO range of 100 to 40,000, expandable to 50 to 104,400. The original EOS 6D was actually a pretty good low light performer, but the new model delivers both higher ISOs and higher resolution. Action fans get a higher frame rate, too. The EOS 6D Mark II can shoot at 6.5 frames per second, which is almost 50% faster than the 4.5 FPS of the old model. Its buffer can capture up to 150 JPEGs or 21 RAW files, which is adequate but not enough to make the 6D Mark II the sports specialist some might like. Canon has decided not to include 4K video, presumably to preserve some differentiation between the 6D II and its more expensive models like the EOS 5D Mark IV. It does offer full HD video at up to 60 FPS, however, and adds in-camera 5-axis digital stabilization for movies, the first time it's been used on a full-frame model. Canon does not have a physical sensor shift system like those used in Olympus and Sony mirrorless models, but this is probably the next best thing. With each pixel made up of 2 photodiodes, it allows for the creation of a file which contains a pair of images with 2 very slightly different focus points. You can then open the file in Canon's Digital Photo Professional software, and use image micro adjustment to shift the focus ever so slightly, not massively, but Canon believes there's the potential to rescue some shots using this technology. As you'd expect, the file size increases dramatically, from 37 megabytes to 67 megabytes, and you will have to use Canon's rather clunky DPP software. The native sensitivity runs from ISO 132,000 and is expandable to 50 to 102,400. Impressive though this is, this expanded range is actually identical to the 5D Mark III's, although Canon reckons it has enhanced the noise processing algorithm for improved results at higher sensitivities, while it's also a stop more than one of this camera's closest competitors, the Nikon D810. The Canon EOS 5D Mark IV uses both a Digic 6 and a Digic 6 Plus processor, with the former used solely for metering, freeing up the Digic 6 Plus processor to handle everything else, including the 61-point AF system with 41 cross-type sensors. The AF system is sensitive down to 3 EV that's darker than moonlight, so focusing shouldn't be an issue in poor light, while the fact that you can use lens/teleconverter combinations with a maximum aperture of f/8 and still have the luxury of all 61 AF points will be a real draw for sports and wildlife photographers. The 5D Mark IV also inherits Canon's dual-pixel AF technology, meaning there are phase detection points on the imaging sensor itself, promising quicker AF acquisition than we saw in the 5D Mark III, and performance as speedy as in a lot of mirrorless cameras. The large 3.2-inch display boasts an impressive 1,620,000 dots and touchscreen functionality, as on the 1DX Mark II. The difference, though, is that while the touchscreen was only active during live view on the 1DX Mark II, the touchscreen interface on the 5D Mark IV is active all the time, enabling menu navigation and image review as well. The Canon EOS R is an entirely new system, the first of its kind for Canon. But you wouldn't necessarily know that at first glance. Sticking with Canon's standard design approach, the EOS R looks like a more robust EOS M50, complete with a more pronounced battery grip. The EOS R is a great deal smaller than the body of a 5D series cameras. Despite this, it doesn't feel any less substantial in the hands. The magnesium frame gives it a sturdy feel and a reassuring weight. The battery grip is smaller than that of the 5D Mark III, but it doesn't feel too small, even in larger hands. In fact, when we tested out Canon's new 400mm f/2.8 liters IS3 on the body, we were able to comfortably carry it around without much problem. This might be more of a testament to the weight reduction in the 400mm, but it also highlights the ergonomics of the EOS R, even in less than ideal situations. When the EOS R was revealed, one of the most notable exclusions was an AF joystick. Having been a staple on other Canon cameras for a few years now, we dreaded the idea of using the directional pad as the sole means of moving the focus point around the EVF. We even started this review thinking the lack of a joystick was going to be one of the most notable flaws of the camera. But Canon was clever to copy the touchpad AF feature seen in other mirrorless cameras. When looking through the EVF, simply slide your finger around the touchscreen to move the focus point. You can customize this feature to omit certain parts of the screen so your nose or cheek won't accidentally change the focus point when your face is pressed up against the camera. Of all the major camera companies, Canon has been one of the most hesitant to provide thorough user customization options. Sure, there have been a few customizable buttons and dials on past Canon cameras, but even those were neutered due to the limited settings Canon made available. While the Canon EOS 1DX Mark III is brimming with the latest technology, it's built around one fundamental piece of throwback hardware, an optical viewfinder. Mirrorless may indeed be the future of photography, but right now a lag-free electronic viewfinder is still very much that, something that only exists in the future. In the here and now, even the best EVF suffers from lag. It's simple physics: light has to be turned into photons, has to go into a processor and circuitry, then go to another processor, then to a display, then be converted to an image, then transmitted to your eye. Therefore there has to be a lag, even if it's only a matter of milliseconds. So the 1DX Mark III features an optical viewfinder, with which it can shoot 16 frames per second using a 400,000 pixel metering sensor in conjunction with a dedicated Digic 8 processor, with 191 AF points. Using the OVF, the camera is capable of tracking with Face Detect AF. However, when switched to live view, the camera can shoot 20 frames per second using the full 20.1 million pixel readout of the image sensor, combined with the power of the all-new Digic X processor and an enormous 3,869 dual-pixel CMOS AF points. In live view, the 1DX3 is capable of full eye detect AF. You'll have noticed two crucial points there, the first one being the sensor size, 20.1 MP. Yes, not only is that fewer megapixels than the 24.2 of the Sony A9 II, it's also even less than in the 1DX Mark II, which had 20.2. Canon claims that not only is 20 MP the sweet spot for optical performance, dynamic range, high ISO, dual pixel and so on, but this new 20.1 MP sensor actually produces sharpness and resolution equal to a Pro 24.2 MP sensor. That's because traditional low-pass filters used by pro sensors introduce a layer of softness to images. For the sensor in the 1DX Mark III, Canon redesigned the filter, where a traditional low-pass filter employs dual-layer, 4-point subsampling. Canon's uses quad-layer, 16-point subsampling and combines it with a Gaussian distribution technique. While the images certainly seem to pop with clarity, our lab data suggests that fiction may be stranger than truth.